Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brandon Straka.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. Good mid-morning. How's everybody doing? Good. Thanks for coming out, Memphis. My name is Brandon Straka, and some of you probably know, hopefully many of you know, that I created something called the WalkAway campaign. Thank you. I would like to thank everybody at CPAC for having me here today, and they asked me to speak on a topic which I was really excited about, because oftentimes when I travel around, I speak about the why. Why did I leave the left? Why did I start WalkAway, which I'll be talking about today as well. But what they asked me to talk about really was, how did the campaign happen? How did somebody who started off with 40 Twitter followers and 40 followers on Facebook create a movement really from nothing into something that's become, I think, a very recognizable name and a movement that people have heard of from coast to coast and really in countries around the world. And so I'm very excited to talk about that today, because it's something that I haven't really gotten into that much. So let's start with the why. I grew up in rural Nebraska in the 80s and the 90s, and I'm a gay man. So I grew up at a time when the messaging that I received was that Republicans and conservatives are people who hate minorities in this country. They're only greedy, straight white people who are looking out for their own interests. That there is no place in conservatism or the Republican Party for black people, for brown people, for LGBT people, for religious minorities of any kind. This is the messaging that was constantly perpetrated toward me from the entertainment industry, from the media industry. You know, my favorite celebrities, singers, actors, constantly perpetrate the message that liberals and Democrats are the compassionate group of people. These are the people that care about marginalized and victimized classes of people in this country. And as a young person with a big heart, naturally, it seemed like a perfect fit for me to be a liberal. I moved to New York City after I graduated from high school, and I went there to pursue a career in acting and singing, and eventually I became a hairstylist. And I fell in with a very liberal camp. And within that liberal camp, I, as most liberals in big cities do, sort of fell into this bubble, and where news and information is circulated within the confines of that restriction, that bubble. And although I grew up in Nebraska, I think I came to know the people of Middle America less and less and less. And it just became about a recirculation of a narrative that was put forth by the media about who these people were and what they're all about and what they believe. In 2016, I voted for Hillary Clinton. That's usually when people boo. No? Wake up, guys, come on. Thank you. I don't even feel comfortable moving forward until you do that. So in 2016, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I bought entirely into the media narrative of who Donald Trump was and who his supporters were. You know, when he announced that he was running for president, like most people, I thought it was a joke. And the media also treated it as if it were a joke. And it really wasn't until around the time that it became very clear that he was going to win the primary that all of a sudden it wasn't so funny anymore. Not only did it seem clear that he was going to become the Republican candidate, but it also became clear that perhaps Hillary Clinton does not have this in the bag. And that's when I think the liberal powers that be, which is to say the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, which is the liberal media, and the Democratic Party themselves became very clever. And they thought, well, what are we going to do to take this guy out? They thought to themselves, well, what triggers liberals more than anything? Social injustice. We need to make this guy the most racist, the most bigoted, the most homophobic, the biggest monster that's ever run for president. And so they did. They began going to his rallies and following him around on the campaign trail, isolating moments out of context, spinning their own narrative and throwing them out there. And it was very scary for those of us who were believing CNN and MSNBC and the likes. There you go. Also appropriate. So I was shocked on Election Day when Donald Trump won, because the same media that I trusted told me that he had a less than 3% chance of winning. I went on a quest at that point to try to understand how this happened. How did this possibly happen? I started posting constantly on social media, asking my friends, which were largely people that I'd gone to high school with and I grew up with, people from Nebraska that I knew had voted for Trump, why did you do this? Why did you vote for this horrible man? And nobody would answer me. Finally, in January of 2017, I posted that I would never be able to understand how anyone could stand before a cheering crowd and mock a reporter's, how anyone could vote for a man who stood before a cheering crowd and mocked a reporter's disability. And finally, somebody who has known me my whole life, who actually was my babysitter when I was a baby, reached out to me privately on Facebook and asked me, have you seen this? And she sent me a link to a video entitled, Debunking That Trump Mocked the Disabled Reporter. This was a compilation of footage that showed very clearly that Donald Trump had done that same voice and that same gesture numerous times over the years when he was imitating anybody who had been flailing because they were caught in a lie or doing something shady or dishonest. It had nothing to do whatsoever with that reporter's disability. But this kind of blew my mind, because I thought to myself, well, it's almost as if CNN lied to me. And CNN had never lied to me before. So what happened on that day? So I went on a quest to try to understand why, and throughout most of 2017, I did a lot of research, and what I discovered was mind-blowing. I discovered that over and over and over again, the liberal media that I had trusted was manipulating people in this country, all people, but particularly if you are black or brown or LGBT or a minority of any kind, they're using fear and fear-mongering to manipulate and control your thoughts and your behavior and ultimately control how you vote. And when I discovered this, I thought it was unconscionable. I was outraged. And so I decided to do something about it. In May of 2018, I shot a 6-minute video. I wrote a script detailing everything that I found wrong with liberalism in the Democratic Party. I created a Facebook group called the #WalkAway campaign, encouraging other people to also make their testimonials and tell their stories about why they too were walking away from the Democratic Party, the ideology of liberalism, and leftist values. People who were being pushed away. I knew I wasn't alone. I knew there must be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other people who must be feeling exactly the same way I was feeling, that they no longer recognize a party or an ideology that at one time they felt at home with. But I knew there was a larger purpose here as well. I thought back to the time after Donald Trump was elected, and those months when I was trying to understand why anyone voted for him. And I kept thinking about how silent everybody was, that nobody would answer me. During the time that I was doing my research and coming to understand the truth, not only about the Democrats, but also the truth of what it means to be a conservative, who Republicans really are, what the values really are, what the beliefs really are, I came to fall in love with Trump supporters and Republicans. And I thought to myself, if the rest of the world knew you the way that I have come to know you, they would love you too. The problem is, you people don't ever say anything. You don't ever fight back, and there's a reason why they call this the silent majority. I thought to myself, it's time for the silent majority to become unsilent, and that is going to be part of my mission with the WalkAway campaign. Not only should liberals and people, former liberals and people leaving the Democratic Party make their testimonials, but it's time for conservatives to step up and speak out too and make your testimonials. Tell the truth about what it really means to be a conservative. Stop allowing the liberal media to define who and what you are. And so I created this campaign, I made the social media page, and it exploded. Within months, we had hundreds of thousands of people who joined this campaign. Thank you. At this point, we have over 500,000 people who are following us on all social media platforms. We have tens of thousands of video and written testimonials in the WalkAway campaign. But my very small team and I recognize that there's something much larger at play here. This must be more than just a social media movement. We must take to the ground, we must take action, and we must be present in physical spaces, talking to people, touching people, and changing people's thoughts and their opinions, waking people up. And so we've created the WalkAway campaign as a nonprofit organization, and we also have the WalkAway campaign Super PAC. And with these two entities, we are traveling the country, doing town hall style events for the Black community, for the Hispanic community, for the Jewish community, for the LGBT community. We are going into these communities that are being targeted and marketed to by the Democrat Party, and let's face it, are largely not being communicated with at all by the Republican movement. I have been astounded to find that if you simply take the time to have a conversation with Black Americans and Hispanic Americans and Jewish Americans who are typically voting Democrat and ask them why, the answers that you'll get 9 times out of 10 are, well, my parents vote Democrat, my grandparents vote Democrat, aren't Republicans racist? And I say, no, they're not racist, and they're not bigots. If they were, how could a gay man create a movement out of nothing and be loved and supported and lifted up? And speaking at CPAC, there is a great awakening happening in this country right now. I'm a part of it, and so many people are a part of it. It is absolutely amazing, and I'm so proud and thrilled to be a part of this. We are going to shatter the narrative that has been constructed by the liberal media and the Democrat Party. We are going to free Black people and brown people and LGBT people and minorities in this country. Thank you. So with WalkAway, we're touring the country right now, getting into these communities. We've done our Black Americans town halls so far in Harlem, downtown Los Angeles, and Atlanta. We've done LGBT town halls in New York City, West Hollywood, and Chicago. I'm very proud to say that on November 9th, we'll be doing our very first WalkAway Hispanic Americans town hall in District 14 of New York City. That's AOC's district. Yeah, I'm not very subtle. I like to go right into the belly of it. So we'll be starting that series there, and in December we'll have our very first WalkAway Jewish Americans Town Hall, and we're going to be addressing all types of communities between now and 2020 and well beyond, because I want WalkAway to live on for a long time. In January, in Nashville, Tennessee, we'll be having our very first WalkAway American Women's Town Hall for those of you ladies out there who are sick and tired of being represented by third and fourth wave feminists in the media, who don't feel like women who go out in public with vaginas on their heads and scream and shriek are really a representative of who and what you are. We're going to give a voice back to conservative women. And we are getting into college campuses with the WalkAway Thought Revolution College Campus Tour, which we kicked off last week in Arizona. We have created our own educational video series called The Hard Truth, dedicated to debunking liberal media lies and myths and Democrat lies and myths. Each episode is about 5 minutes long with a different speaker speaking on a different topic. We've shot 10 episodes. We intend to shoot a lot more, speaking on subjects such as liberal media bias, anti-Semitism on the left, racism, social media censorship, all of these issues that are facing all of us as conservatives. And speaking of social media censorship, once the WalkAway campaign became a force to be reckoned with, the liberal media, of course, did what they do best. They started lying about me. They could no longer ignore me or my movement, so they began lying. They said this was a Russian propaganda campaign, that these were not real people creating testimonials, that these were Russian bots, paid actors. And so at that point, then, of course, social media seized the opportunity to start suppressing us and making it dropping our members, making it difficult for us to communicate. So very soon, with the new and improved WalkAwayCampaign.com will be coming out. We've built our own social media construct in which people can join our movement and have all the same functionality as Facebook on WalkAwayCampaign.com. So we are an autonomous entity that cannot be controlled by Mark Zuckerberg and have full access to communicate with our members. Coming very soon. I'm so terrible at being brief. I have 1 minute and 20 seconds, so I have to wrap it up. But I will say that the last point I guess I want to make is that one of the things when the liberal media began lying about us was I felt that I needed to fight back against that. And so I scratched my head a little bit and I thought, okay, well, if they're going to say that we're fake people and fake Russian bots, whatever, let's prove them wrong. And so in October of last year, I threw the first WalkAway March on Washington in DC, where 5,000 people from across the country showed up in a live demonstration to fight back. As we all know, this is probably the most crucial election of our lives coming up in 2020. It is so important that we speak out, stand up, and we have a president in office who is fighting for the American people unlike anything we've ever seen before. We must stand up for him in return. We must defend our president. We must stand up for our president. And with that, there's something that I'd like to show you. Very quickly before I do, I please encourage all of you to go to walkawaycampaign.com, sign up for our email list. You can text the word walkaway to 51400 to get on our text message list. And we have a booth right outside. Please drop by, grab some literature, take a picture with me, say hello. And I'm out of time. With that, I want to just say, so many people loved our Walkaway March on Washington in 2018, have been begging us to do something else. As I said, we owe it to this president and to America to stand up loud and proud coming in 2020. This is a major election. With that, I would like to show you a presentation, something which I want to see you all at in 2020. Could we please roll the video?
Passivity got us here.
Today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry.
Complacency got us here. Silence got us here.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
No more. It's time for the silent majority to become unsilent. Coming in the fall of 2020, WalkAway campaign implores you to take a stand, to come together in unity and fight back against the lies, the division, and the hate with love.
Once upon a time, I was a liberal.
This is our last chance to save America. WalkAway campaign presents the Unsilent Majority March on Washington. Visit unsilentmarch.com.
October 3rd of 2020, I want to see all of you at the Unsilent Majority March on Washington, and let's stand up and defend this country and defend our president. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I was just told I'm taking some questions, so that's awesome.
Good morning, Mr. Straka, and thank you for coming to Memphis, Tennessee.
Thank you.
The question I have is my daughter is the founding president of Turning Point USA, APSU, so how do we get you on her campus? Because she's texting me, she's so jealous right now.
Which state is she in?
Here in Tennessee, it's Clarksville, Tennessee.
Okay, excellent. So please come find me at my booth afterwards, or my director of events, which is Melissa Roby. She's here as well. We'll give you a card and any information you need to make that happen. We want to talk to as many young people as possible. So just come find us at the booth, and we'll get that set up.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Sorry,
Thank
all
you
I can
so
see is a
much.
black mask, so I don't know where you are.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, hi.
Thank you. And her name's Melissa as well, so she's going to be
Easy.
so excited.
Oh, cool. Tell
So
Melissa
thank
hello.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming, and I've been following you since you started. But I want to ask, what about the rhinos? How do we stand up to those within the Republican Party that no longer represent our values?
Oh, God. Well, in terms of standing up to them, I mean, do you feel, how often do you feel like you're in a situation where you're confronted with a vocal rhino? I mean, I feel like we see that a lot within the government when it's sort of something that is not tangible. But do you feel like you experience that in your daily life?
Because of the representation that we
Right. I mean, it's absolutely confounding to me because what it shows so very clearly is that this president, who won by an overwhelming amount of the voting electorate, is so clearly the president that the American people want, need, and desperately, desperately believe in at this point to save our country. So anybody who would stand in opposition to that, the Democrats are bad enough, we know that, but any Republicans who claim to be on our team, who claim to be on the same side, who would stand in opposition to that, clearly don't care about you, they don't care about me, and they don't care about this country in a way that they should or were elected to do. I think, to answer your question, I think the best thing that we can do is keep standing up and speaking out for our president. I think we have to keep voting for MAGA, Republicans and people who believe in the same mission that we do. But our president is really going through a hard time right now. And I know I don't need to tell you that. But we've watched this man now for 2-3 years take it on the chin day after day after day after day. And this guy has more energy and more resilience, I think, than anybody that I've ever seen before in my life. But I do sometimes look at him lately and I feel like he's getting fatigued a little bit. And how could you not? And it kills me sometimes when like on Twitter recently, I posted something which he actually retweeted. But I posted, this is not the time to allow the media or rhinos or Democrats to get us down. Because I'm starting to read these comments, a few of them, they're rare, but I'm reading from people saying, I love President Trump, I love what he's accomplishing, but I'm just getting so tired of the bad press. I was like, is that his fault? Is the bad press his fault? Like, I want everyone to wake up every day, drink a cappuccino, do some jumping jacks, and get on board with this president. It is like, we can't be tired, we cannot be fatigued, we cannot back down. It is our government still, it is a government of the people still, and we need to hang on to that and remember that. It is our government, it isn't their government. And we cannot be passive, we have to fight back. I mean, that's the biggest answer I can give you. Keep speaking up, keep loudly and proudly supporting this president, and let him know you've got his back, and let the rhinos and the people who are opposing him know their time is limited. We will vote you out. Done? Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Come visit us at the booth.
Our first panel of the day is Why Cities Are Failing. Please welcome to the stage Brandon Straka, Maj Toure, Jesse Kelly, and ACU Communications Director Ian Walters.
Hello, Memphis. How about this panel that we have lined up for you today? With the exception of Jesse Kelly, we have some serious, deep thinkers who are going to present to you this afternoon. So much of what we see in politics, and when we read political coverage, a lot of folks are concerned with the suburban vote. The reason that is they figure that rural areas are going to go red, and that urban areas are going to go blue. And so we want to talk about why that's the case, and if there's any hope for cities to come back and begin to think about different policy options that can help improve people's lives. Maj, I want to start with you. You're from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Birthplace of America, baby.
That's right. And first, what's your Twitter handle so everybody can follow you on Twitter?
Yes, and if I follow you, follow me back, or I'll block you, just so you're aware. It's at Maj Toure, Majtoure.
Maj, we first became familiar with you as the founder and innovator of the Black Guns Matter movement, a pro-Second Amendment organization run out of Philadelphia, right there in the city. Yes. When I think of city, I'm from Washington, D.C. There's obviously a total firearm ban for everybody in Washington, D.C. You're denied that constitutional right to protect yourself, to self-defense. But what do you see in Philadelphia, and how did you arrive at the position of being such a strong advocate, not just for all of your constitutional rights, but specifically the Second Amendment?
Well, for one, traveling around before, making music and going to a lot of these urban centers, I had already been to them. And so I would go back to a place. I'll go back to Compton to hang out with my friends after I've, sold music. And I'd say, yo, where's Steve or whoever? Yo, he caught a gun charge. It's like, oh, who'd he shoot? Oh, he didn't shoot anybody. He just had the gun. Then I'll go to Chicago, and it's like, yo, it's a tough neighborhood. He's supposed to have a gun, right? Then I'll go back to Chicago, hang out. Yo, where's Kurt? Oh, he caught a gun charge. Who'd he shoot? Who'd he rob? Nobody. He just had the gun. So then over time, you start to see that this is a highly organized phenomenon. This is not an accident. The reason why gun control is put in these places more specific, first and foremost, all gun control is racist from its inception, the maintenance of it, and things of that nature. That's number one. But it's about people control. So what better way to convince Americans that they don't have the means to, or shouldn't have the means to defend their values, especially starting in those urban centers, because those are the areas that are the most populated. New York, 8 million people at any given moment. Chicago, Philadelphia, all big urban centers. So recognizing that that was more about control than actual safety or liberty or freedom, it was like, okay, we actually have the skill set, the languaging to communicate with my demographic. These are my hoods. So for us, it was like, okay, let's just go through and just educate people.
We had the great privilege, the ACU and CPAC staff yesterday, to going out to Ben Ferguson's barbecue joint and shooting range about 20 minutes up the road. And we had to have the fully auto experience. We shot an AR-9, we shot Glocks, we did an Uzi. And it was clear that firearms are, as we all know, these are dangerous, dangerous things. Why is it that the AR, the liberals seem to think that if you ban an AR or do a buyback on an AR, that that's going to make a difference?
No, they're very, you ever see like those karate movies where the guy's like the drunken monkey and you think he can't fight? Liberals are playing, they're lying. They're very aware, the data's out there. John Lotz wrote however many books. They don't seem to think that. They have a vested interest in making sure that Americans don't have the means to defend themselves. That's just what it is. The reality is, thank you. So they're aware of it. They just want to make it seem as if it's about safety, and it's not. AR is, no shameless plug intended, but the AR is like a Mac product. It's just very user-friendly. It's very practical. It's not a bunch to it. So they'll come up with these things and say, oh, that's a weapon of war. None of my friends that have done any military service are taking an AR to war at all. It's a practical firearm that, however many 100 million Americans can use to defend against tyranny. So be very clear. The liberal agenda is to impose tyranny via socialism and all of these other different things. So I don't think that they're unaware. I know that they're very aware. And it's our job to make sure that we're exposing that contradiction to the maximum degree.
This is the fight we're in, folks. It's not red versus blue, R versus D. It is a struggle between liberty and tyranny. So remember that word tyranny. We're talking about crime in urban areas as related to the Second Amendment. Jesse Kelly, you are in Houston, Texas now. You're the host of I Am Right with Jesse Kelly. That's the television portion of your resume. And then the Jesse Kelly Show on radio.
I named that myself.
You also grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Do you think, what's the impact that illegal immigration and things happening at the southern border is having in those southern states with regard to crime and keeping families safe?
It's humongous. I mean, everybody criticized President Trump when he came out and made that statement. Everyone remembers it in the beginning. Mexico's not sending their best. They're bringing crime. Those are factual statements. That's not in any way a controversial statement. And if you spend 5 seconds talking to somebody on the Border Patrol, they'll tell you that. Yes, lots of those people are poor people coming to try to get a job. But yes, lots of those people are drug runners, murderers, rapists. And when they come in, they'll stop at the first place where they get an opportunity, or oftentimes they'll stop at the first place where a cartel will ship them. So that's why Tucson and Phoenix, Arizona are basically the human smuggling capitals of the United States of America. So we see it all. And people talk about how unjust it is to put an illegal immigrant in a fenced area until we figure out what processing is. You know what's unjust? They stuff them people 50 at a time in a semi-trailer and let them roast to death in the desert somewhere. That's called unjust. That's disgusting. And While I am the biggest border hawk in the world, I mean, I want a wall. You can make it 9,000 feet tall for all I care and put in the daggone moat with alligators for all I give a crap. But they are still people, and as a human being, when you find out what's actually done by the human smugglers bringing those people into this country, it is disgusting and it is repulsive. You find out about moms giving their daughters birth control pills before they take off because they know what will happen to them on the way. Don't tell me about compassion and things like that when you stand for that. There's nothing less compassionate than open borders, nothing.
Well, I think a lot of the people in this room are behind you 100% with what you say. There's no doubt that there are millions and millions of people who are choosing to behave as if there is no crisis at all. Nothing to see here. Now, people will say that it's an open borders agenda they want, but how is it that influencers on the left have convinced so many people nothing to see here, it's all your fault, it's all of your bigoted views that's leading to this?
Well, you got to understand, I mean, a wiser man than myself, not that there are many of those people out there, but a wiser man than myself once said that you'd be able to see that border wall from space if illegal immigrants were taking the jobs of politicians or taking the jobs of cable news pundits or lawyers, but they're not. They're taking black people's jobs. They're taking poor white people's jobs. They are taking jobs that should go to American citizens, and so those are the people who are mad about the whole thing. The people who cry, racism this and this is unjust, it's always some well-to-do white liberal woman in San Francisco somewhere, you know, sipping on a glass of champagne, talking about how compassionate she is to the illegal immigrants, but if her landscaper steps out of line, she fires him in the next 5 seconds. Give me a break with that.
It's true.
It's absolutely true. The other thing to remember, in addition to the liberal open border mentality, is that there is inside of Republican circles a corrupt business bargain to make sure that there is an open border for the cheap labor here in the United States. You know, and you let shareholder value be the be-all, end-all, and forget about the human component. Then we as conservatives have failed to organize and have failed to push back strongly enough in defense of our fellow men and women. Brandon Straka, you're from New York City.
Yes, sir.
You're from Harlem.
Yes.
The north part.
I live in Harlem.
The north part of the island.
Yes.
We heard from you earlier about your story and how you formed the WalkAway movement. What was living up there like before you came to your senses? Give all of our folks from Western Tennessee here a sense of how people operate and how they compel folks in the city to think certain ways.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that there is no fault that lies with the people themselves. The people of Harlem are great people. The people in the Bronx are great people. The people in the outer boroughs of New York are great people. So it has nothing to do with the people. It has to do with the messaging that they're receiving on a regular basis, and it has to do with their leadership. Now, when we do these events for the WalkAway campaign, for example, the very first WalkAway Black Americans town hall that we did was in Harlem. As both a promotional and a marketing tool for the event, I got my video camera, my microphone, and I went out and I interviewed my neighbors and people in Harlem to let them know we're doing this event. And the questions I was asking them are things like, do you typically vote Democrat? Why? Would you be willing to change your mind? Do you think the Democratic Party is representing you well? What I found time and time again, in fact, I don't know if I omitted any of the interviews. I put this out on YouTube, interviewed at least 15, 16 people, I would say, and every single one of them replied by saying, I don't feel well represented by the Democrat Party. I don't think they care about us. If I vote at all, many of them feel like their vote doesn't matter anymore, but if I vote at all, I usually vote Democrat because that's what my mom did, that's what my grandma did, that's what I...
Generational.
Yeah, well, and Republicans are racist. That's what the news keeps telling me all the time. That's what my friends keep telling me. That's what, I mean, we're living in a bubble. And when asked, would you be willing to rethink this or make a different choice? All of them said yes. And many of those people that I interviewed did come to my town hall. We did voter registrations at the event and changed the voter registrations away from the Democrat Party of 5 people that night and signed up 12 new voters. The reason why I'm telling you this is because it's an absolutely mistaken notion that it's a hopeless case. What's the point of even talking to the people in these inner cities? What's the point of even doing any outreach whatsoever? They're going to vote Democrat anyway. No, you're just lazy and you're not talking to them. Period.
Last week, we lost somebody who I respected a great deal in the House of Representatives. I did not agree with him very much as a fellow Marylander, but Elijah Cummings passed away. He was a hard left Democrat, but he was a well-respected leader coming from the city of Baltimore. After the protests that turned into riots surrounding the Freddie Gray incident, the stores were burning, half of the town was on fire, and Elijah, who lived in that neighborhood, took to the streets with his bullhorn, trying to quell the civil unrest. This is a really respectable man. Brandon, I contrast that with sort of the leadership I see in New York City. How do New Yorkers of all stripes feel about, you talked about leadership, about the person who is the darling of the national political scene at this point, squad leader Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Are New Yorkers behind her 100%?
See, okay, that's another perfect example. So, sorry, I keep coming back to what WalkAway is doing, but we are just about to do our first Hispanic Americans Town Hall in her district. And thank you. And once again, to get the word out, I went into District 14 and I interviewed the people of District 14 and asked them all. I couldn't find one person who thought, yeah, she's doing them. Actually, no, that's not true. There was one guy who said, you know, I didn't really love her, I didn't vote for her, but now I'm starting to kind of come around on it. But again, they're not getting the opposite messaging. They're not, and this is one of my biggest fears. This is something I talk about all the time as I travel the country and I do speaking events. For people like myself, a member of the LGBT community, for people of the African American community, Hispanic community, we're getting these messages time and time again that the only choice that we have is Democrat. And my fear at this point, that's bad enough. That's bad enough. But now the Democrats are becoming more fringe, more leftist, more socialist, more communist, more, and it is not going to be long before every black person, every LGBT person thinks that they have to be a socialist, that they have to be a communist. Well, of course I'm a socialist, I'm black. Duh. Well, I'm gay. Of course I'm a socialist. Again, we're not communicating properly from the other side with these people. So to answer your question, no, they're not big fans of AOC. And a lot of them feel like the Amazon deal that she killed, they recognize it cost tens of thousands of jobs. It costs new schools. It costs, cleaning up their communities and beautifying their communities. These people recognize that their lives are not all that it could be, that their communities are not all that they could be. But who's talking to them besides AOC?
Maj, you have decided to take the leadership question personally and taken the bull by the horns and decided to run for public office in your hometown of Philadelphia. What were the problems that you saw with the existing leadership? And I think sort of generations and decades of bad leadership that allowed you to make that decision to just say, I'm going to go do this. I've had enough.
So for one, it's kind of selfish because you travel around the country doing this work with Black Guns Matter, teaching everybody about firearm safety, conflict resolution, de-escalation. You get, generational moms. I've had grandmothers, moms, and daughters come touch a firearm and shoot for the first time in our classes, right? Yeah. So you inform everybody about this, and then you look at your city, and they're talking, not only are they talking about, sanctuary city, you're dancing in the streets in violation of federal law, right? Then on top of that, you're asking for preemption to make different rules on guns. So it's a contradiction. So with that being the case, to do all of this work, and then your own city be in a space where there's a lack of information, and then some dweeb politician that is either ignorant or, again, aware, decides to go, okay, we're going to make rules that now we're going to get rid of preemption. And then on top of that, we're going to make a separate set of rules for Philadelphia where semi-automatic, firearms in general, not just long guns, handguns, anything, those are now unlawful. And I know it sounds, to all of the gun people, they're like, well, that's every modern firearm. Mm-hmm. But these people in these spaces either are unaware, so we got to educate them, and they don't have anybody in their peer group that they have to listen to. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to go take one of these seats in city council. Now you have to deal with me as your peer group. And if you're one of those politicians that are unaware, come on to the class. Let's educate you on this thing so you're not just making legislation. A lot of times they don't even read the bills. They don't read the bills. I'm in their rooms. I'm in their offices. And so it's like, okay, we can educate you. So you go, oh, that's what I was about to agree to? No, no, no. Or I'll expose the fact that you're unaware or you're deliberately trying to make Philadelphians soft. What we have here, in essence, is, like Brandon was saying, they've become so accustomed to just getting the urban and black vote. Spanish, Asian, gay, whatever, doesn't matter. We just get it. Hillary just slides in, is like, hey, I'm here, I got my moo-moo on, it's happening.
I got my hot sauce.
Hot sauce.
I got my hot sauce.
Hot sauce.
Everything's cool. So for us, we
right,
have
she's
to show
watching
somebody.
And one
right,
mixtapes with everybody, right.
We have to show our demographic not only that you do have that option, right? But another option is if you don't like it, you can get involved and actually change it. So
Right.
you got to be the change that you want.
I hope that inspires a lot of other folks of our generation to get up there and do something about it. In Washington, D.C., there's a real problem with the city council, the folks that get elected, and we've got an uptick in crime in Washington, D.C., and the folks have decided that it is not the law enforcement's job to crack down on crime, that it's, we're just lacking community involvement, or we're just lacking good neighbors, and it's not working. What's sort of your solution, what you do with violent crime? And the role of law enforcement in urban areas?
Most law enforcement, so we did our first classes in 2015 and 2016 going into the presidential elections. When the stats came, before we went on the tour, because right now we're on a 50-state tour, crowdsourced, ask me for the GoFundMe later, shameless plug. With this being the case, before we started the tour, we did the bulk of our classes in Philadelphia for 2015 and 2016 around conflict resolution. When the stats came out in 2017 for 2016, Philadelphia had the lowest violent crime that it had since 1979. The answers are there. So I was, litmus test. Okay, let's try it in Chicago. I moved to Chicago for a month. No cameras, no firearms training. I moved to the South Side. I stayed in a hostel. It was the worst hostel on earth, right? I stayed there. We only did conflict resolution for a month in 2018. That bloody weekend, it's one of those holiday weekends where normally it's going to be 50 homicides. There was no homicides that weekend. The answer there is conflict resolution. It is not legislation. It is not legislation. Conflict resolution, getting young guys, because for the most part, us guys, we kind of savage. Young guys are the guys doing it. If we can get them at 19, 20 years old, show them, hey, this is what the culture of proper firearms ownership, this is what conflict is, this is what conflict is not. And if you can stay on the straight and narrow, when you're 21, you can have all of the firearms you want lawfully. That is an incentive to be in alignment with safe and responsible gun ownership. This has practically been the answer all across the country. So those are the answers. And we have the data. John Lott's books are there. 1990, gun-free zones pop up. Since then, over 90% of mass shootings are in gun-free zones. All of the places that have all of the legislation have all of the violent crime. The data is there. The problem is we've allowed the left to paint us as we don't care about the trauma. We don't care about the death. And we have to seamlessly merge education while preventing the trauma at the same time. The left is especially in places like New York, they are very good at making it appeal like they care about your trauma and your feelings. As long as they're Xerxes. All they want you to do is kneel. You'll get the movie reference later. So that's my point. That the answer there was really education, not legislation.
That is some community solutions that we could see, I would love to see in a lot of urban areas, especially Washington, D.C., where I'm from. Look, I am from Washington, D.C. Very recently, my wife and I decided to move south of the city, outside of the Beltway. Part of it was for the commute, but part of it was because over the past few years, I became a dad. I got a 3-year-old girl, a 1-year-old girl. They're running around there. Thank you. My wife did all the work, but thank you nonetheless. That applause is for her. But it was, as a dad, a real desire to not want to raise my kids in the city when I see the uptick in crime. And so we got something with a big yard. It's relatively safe, a nice little hidden driveway. I can give them a 2-minute head start before they see another vehicle. Jesse, we were just talking backstage, and you're a dad too, and decided to live a suburban lifestyle out there. You said that you didn't want to do the city. What led to the thinking in your decision as a dad, as a family man, to decide to not be in downtown Houston?
Well, I don't want my kids in crappy government schools. I mean, that's government. If at all possible, my kids will never get a government education ever. Yeah. And it's not talked about enough in this country. Every single problem we have, we talk about, the press being the enemy of the people. I know we have a bunch of press people here. I'm sure some of you suck too. But the bottom line is, if you want to deal with the real enemy within, you look at the public education system in the United States of America. They're teaching Seattle. They're teaching Seattle grade school kids, or they're going to implement this, about how math is racist, about how I'm not making that up, that's for real.
It too.
And that's spreading across the United States
Math
of America.
has been canceled,
These
folks.
people, we send our kids off at 5 or 6 years old to school in some government center with government teachers and government funding, and then we send them off 7-8 hours a day till they're 18, and now they're almost gone, and then we send them off to a commie training camp called a university for 4 more years, and we wonder at the age of 22 why all of a sudden we're churning out socialists. You know the reason the left is everywhere right now? That you can't do anything. You can't turn on the TV. You can't do anything because they control all the supply lines. In war, whoever controls the supply lines wins, and you can have all these little squabbles all you want. They're churning out new socialists every single year from our education system.
Public schools and universities have, in fact, become re-education camps. As you're saying, they exist. It's not just in North Korea and in the People's Republic of China where they're trying to re-educate the next generation. I agree with you. Your tax dollars are always, though, going to go to that corrupt education system to continually fund pensions, to continually support the unions, to continually create an atmosphere where you can't get rid of bad teachers. What the hell are we supposed to do about it, Jesse Kelly? I mean, we got an alternative, homeschooling things. We could take another $1,000 bite out of our paycheck to send them to private schools, but that takes care of our own kids. Are we just going to let these kids that go through the camps go?
Well, first of all, you do have an obligation, first and foremost, to your own kids. The reason I moved to the suburbs, because I care about my kids more than I care about any of your kids, and I expect you to feel the same way. You know what I mean? They're my daggone kids. Those are the 2 kids God gave me to raise, so those are the ones I got to raise right. But we got to, 1, run for school board more often, because 2, we can't do the solution that I want. That will be completely destroy the public education system, because all it's done is ruin this freaking country.
Why not?
We should have home schools, private schools. People seem to, because we live in this current environment, people think that we've always had public schools. There's always been public education. No, parents used to take control of a child's education. So much of that fell on the mother, and then when the child was old enough, the father would teach a child a trade, would teach him how to live, teach him how to exist in the world. That's the history of the world. But now, as Americans, we're trained to think, well, I've got to send little Timmy off to history class where he can learn how bad America sucks for 8 hours a day. Screw that. Nah.
I agree. I think so. Well, my babies, I put them in this weird, I say weird because it's weird to everybody else. I put them in this weird school in South Philly. I don't want to say where it is. They kind of like let them do their thing, and then I'm directly involved. When I'm in town, I take my children to school. I pick them up every single day. I sit in their classes, voting and being in those spaces where you're like, okay, what are your actual lesson plans? What are you actually telling my child? These are the types of things that are very practical, but it still ties back into the concept of, social studies, civics being removed from the schools and being replaced with whatever else. What if you're the parent? And if you're not involved, you are complicit. And if you're complicit in it, now I'm not saying tomorrow you got to pull your children out, but at least start that process. If you start a new business, right, you're going to, okay, I got this job until I'm out of the business, and you transition. We have to start thinking in those directions. And then, like you said, go back a bit. Firearm safety used to be taught in schools. trade.
Boxing. They used to have them boxing.
Right. Homeschooling. All of these, home economics. You know, all of these things. So to me, this is a holistic approach.
Back to the basics. Brandon, up there, studies have come out saying something like 7 out of every 10 college students thinks that socialism is a good idea. I thought we got rid of this idea when the Berlin Wall came down, that it was game over, that the fall of the USSR meant that we win, they lose, just as Ronald Reagan intended. I cannot believe that our generation has to fight the same damn fight that our parents' generation fought, that our grandparents fought in Korea. But here we are nonetheless. What would your message be as our final word on this excellent panel to young people who seem to be infatuated with this idea, you know, of no college bills, of Medicare for all, of an equal playing field, equal outcomes for everybody? I think it destroys hope. I think it destroys lives. I think it destroys humanity. But what would your message? You're the outside of the conservative movement kind of guy. What would be your approach to talk to these folks who seem so infatuated with these failed ideas?
Well, my message to any of those people would be that I understand why they feel the way that they feel, because it sounds kind and it sounds compassionate, and because they obviously have big hearts and they obviously care about people. What I want people to understand, and what I want everyone in this room and everyone across the country to start speaking out more, because we have to push the notion that conservatism is compassionate. Conservatism is kind. Conservatism is not the opposite of compassion. In fact, the reason why we care so much about capitalism, about the sovereignty of our nation, about our freedom and our Constitution, is because we care so much about people, and that we know that under capitalism and these types of principles, we can lift more people out of poverty. We can give people more freedom, more choice, and opportunities. And just in closing, I would like to say, I could run down the list of all of the reasons why Democrat-run cities are, we all remember the word President Trump used. But to simply acknowledge, you're talking to, I'm an AA guy here, and I know very well that the first step is to admit that we have a problem. And the left has made it impossible to admit that we have a problem. They're the only ones allowed to talk about the problem. If the right talks about the problem, we're racists and bigots and every other thing just for simply saying there is a problem. They're talking about the problem, but they're saying it's all our fault. So we have to just stand up and engage and act. Don't wait for the government to do it. Don't wait for the political leaders to do it. Look at my friend Scott Pressler, who's going into Democrat-run cities across the country and cleaning them up. No one's stopping anyone in this room from going out, cleaning up a city, do voter registration, have conversations with people in the inner cities, engage in acts of kindness. Let's show the world that conservatives are compassionate and conservatives are kind. Let's take that narrative back.
Memphis, I hope you will take these words to heart. I hope you're feeling motivated, inspired by the words of Brandon Straka, Maj Toure, and the incomparable Jesse Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice round of applause for our panel.